You are listening to Journeys with Rebecca Radio with your host, Rebecca Jerngan, your tour guide into discoveries. Coming to you live simulcast from the heart of America to around the globe via the World Wide Web, terrestrial radio, satellite, and podcast. Let's journey together into the realms of the unknown to the known in search of enlightenment, of truth.
Good evening. I am here in the heart of America, broadcasting live and heard on Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com, Studio B, and also being simulcast at wolfspiritradio.com. This is your host, Rebecca Jerngan, and you are listening to Journeys with Rebecca, and welcome to the year 2014. Wow, I'm really glad to be here with you guys tonight. I hope each and every one of you had the most fantastic holiday season with family, friends, and your loved ones. I hope you all remember how it felt to have that Christmas spirit, so to speak, what it really stands for, and carry that energy, that feeling, that spirit that's within you throughout this year and beyond. Tonight, I'm going to be sharing with you some of last year's influences energetically, and a little bit about astrology, and then moving into this year and what's coming up for all of us, or at least the potential. I do hope you have some questions too, because I'd love to answer them in the show tonight. But before I forget, please do log on to my website. That's journeyswithrebecca.com. To sign up for the newsletter, which is free and confidential, please look at the top right-hand side there. You'll find it. You can check it out. And sign up for the newsletter that I send out just before each show, or if I have a lot of guests lined up or whatever, I might send them out once or twice a month. And please, while you're there, please be sure to check out Conscious Creations, and that's Conscious and Creations is with a K.com. That link and banner can also be found in the newsletter, as well as it can be found on Facebook. Some really wonderful things that are made with energy, love, and total consciousness by the artists there. So I think you might enjoy that. Please do remember that both of these radio stations are commercial free and listener supported. So please use the donation button found at Wolf Spirit Radio website and the site support button found at freedomslips.com. All right. I think I've got the announcements out of the way. I do want to share with everyone tonight is that, that this is going to be kind of one of those unusual shows because there's been so much activity, energetically, emotionally, spiritually, that has happened and transpired over the last few weeks. And there's a lot to cover. And, sometimes I have a tendency to ramble on. So please, if you do have a question for me tonight or a specific topic you wish for me to address, please use the chat box features found on Wolf Spirit Radio. Please put them in all caps, as well as at Revolution Radio in all caps, so that we know that those are questions. And the monitor, who is my lovely friend Sherry, will forward those on to me. I think that's it for the minute. I hope I know Dave, my engineer here at Wolf Spirit Radio, and also the owner, did not feel well. I hope he's feeling better now. And I want to thank everyone for kind of hanging out, waiting for the shows to return. I have been spending some time with my family over the last few weeks, much needed time, and lots of shifting and changing going on, not only within my own local universe, but also within theirs. And I had a delightful, lovely time just sharing that energy and space with my loved ones and friends over the holiday season. I thought a great deal about all of those of you who listen in to both of these radio stations as well, and how you all are just absorbing information. Many of you are taking a lot of what the host and the guest of the host, some of their more higher spiritually minded information, and using it to transform your own lives and to assist those around you. But it has been a strange transition from 2013 into 2014. And I kind of want to revisit some of that before I go forward, because it's been quite kind of interesting to note the major changes. 2012 was an extraordinary shifting from one place into another, and as we all know, it really begins on the solstice, the winter solstice, and it carries through. We had a lot of energetics in the end of 2013, and I do mean a lot of energetics. We're going to talk a little bit about the sun and its magnetic shift. It finally made its total magnetic shift. And for those of you who are paying attention to that magnetic shift of the sun, you probably would have noticed some changes within your own physical space, whether it be your physical body, your environment, how you might have perceived things. But many of you probably felt some differences, so to speak, in regards to how you felt. That magnetic shift was way more pronounced, in my opinion, than it had been in the previous shifts that it has done, because it's not the first time. I guess it's around every 11 years or so that the sun flips its magnetic field. But because we are sitting, and we've talked about this for several years in a row, that our planet within the solar system itself is sitting in a different, literally into a different space, which means it's got a different energetic, a different tone, a different vibration. And so the sun's magnetic shift affected us differently this time, in my opinion, than it ever has before, and it was way more pronounced. It's either that or maybe we're all just way more aware of it. And maybe it's a little of both if you want to look at it in that perspective. So that magnetic shift, though, however, it seemed to me, as I was making a lot of observations, it seemed to me that after that shift, the magnetic shift, that there was a lessening of, I guess I'll call it the heaviness that maybe people might have felt, a physical heaviness or a cloudiness, even if it was a short reprieve. Cause then we moved right after that into, the big supermoon on January 1st. We're going to have another one on January 31st. And then tomorrow, we have a day of, one of the, most strange days, which is a lesser gravity field, which I think is also going to be quite interesting. So that's coming up on January 4th, which is tomorrow. Maybe tomorrow for some of you who are listening to this show, if you're listening to it live. So again, we're really seeing a lot of physical activity that is really producing very noticeable effects in our own space, in our own world. I think it's really a very interesting time for all of us to be here. We said that back in 2012. We're saying it again at the end of 2013 into 2014. But this is really, truly an interesting time for us, because I really believe that 2014 is going to be, we're going to see even more of, I guess we'll call it the great humanitarian efforts and the great humanitarians coming forward. The voices of those who have not been heard in the past, those that are really for humanity as a whole and wanting to see this world transform itself into something other than where it had been heading. We're going to begin to see more and more of those projects, more and more of those people. We're going to see a lot more of what we would call the good guys, the white hats, whatever you want to put it as, right? Coming forward. The fear and the grip of the fear is lessening for many people. And of course, within that whole thing also means that, those that have always kind of held a rein over all of this is also going to be tightening their grasps. But I think the most interesting thing is that the ones that really are trying to do good for humanity and want to share the technology, the information, the wisdom, all of that, you're going to be hearing more and more from them, more so than we have in the past. So 2014 is going to be quite a magnanimous year in regards to all things. And as the individual goes, we're all going to be sitting back and taking a look and taking another look at really what we were looking for to transpire in 2013. Is that really maybe we need to readjust what it is that we're actually looking for in 2014, because we have hopefully gotten some additional information, some insight. We have made, higher connections to our higher selves, as it were. We've become more aware of what the needs truly are as opposed to the wants, the separation of that. So I think that we're going to see a huge world opening up to many people. And I'm going to talk about some very specific things here in just a couple of minutes, but I do see that I have a question that's come in. And it's from Free Sovereign, is asking, is there any update on the timing of the paradigm shift? Well, listen, here's my opinion of it. It's already in process. People look at the paradigm shift as one day, it could be, let me reframe that, I'm sorry, could be looking at it as a paradigm shift as one day the world is one way and then everything shifts and then the next day it's different. Not exactly how it is. It's a transitional period. Much like we had to wait for many months for this sun to do its magnetic flipping, right? It's of its poles, and we felt the effects of that magnetic shift, and we felt it when it actually flipped. And now we're kind of getting readjusted to these new energies. So it really is about a series of events that the energetic support whatever the energies are actually trying to tell us. So this paradigm shift is already in full swing. It's been in full swing for a while. In my opinion, it started when I look back at the way things were, it actually started with a harmonic convergence, and it's been a slow build. And then as we watched the 2000s come in, it seemed like there was a huge escalation in what we would call the time factor. Time literally sped up, and from 2000 until the present day, each year you'll see people talk about it going, wow, this just went by so fast, so fast, so fast, so fast. And we are literally in that time of speed up, so to speak. Has time really sped up, or what is that? That's now we're getting into the quantum physics of it all, which is not an area of expertise that I have as far as being able to intellectually speak of it. All I can see is energetic signatures, and I get the visuals of it, but I certainly do not have the vocabulary to express it, as I have not studied that as an educational process for myself in regards to academia. So that being said, we are in the paradigm shift, and I think 2014 you are really going to begin to see some of the better aspects, as it were, of humanity. I think we're going to see more and more of it. There's too many people out there that are really have become educated and informed and are doing their own research on everything. The internet has been a huge door opening for humanity, no matter how it's being used. I mean, you can use anything for good or you can use anything for the negative, right? I mean, that's just the nature of where we're at. It's duality. But in the case of the internet, as you sift through the piles and piles and piles of information on any topic out there now, you kind of have to ascertain the truth. But, 20 years ago, certainly that information was not available to us as freely as it is now. I mean, it's freely available to people. Most things you don't even have to pay for to find out about. You can go online and learn just about any topic on any subject that you want, and it will take you down different rabbit holes and different places. You can find yourself, for just getting totally wrapped up in just one topic or one subject matter. It'll take you everywhere. So the internet has been a huge benefit in some cases, for this leapfrog of information and the jump start into, wow, this is very interesting. I mean, I still think it's totally fascinating that, again, you can send a piece of paper through this little machine and somebody gets that same piece of paper with the identical information on another end in, in Japan or Australia or, South Africa or wherever it might be going, or across the city. To me, it's kind of an amazing thing. Now we've got printers that they're using, and these printers, are literally making objects. I mean, we're coming leaps and bounds. We're coming into an extremely powerful time on this planet. The build up for 2012 was all about making choices. We talked a lot about separating the wheat from the chaff. You were going to see a lot of it. We've seen a ton of that in 2013. We had seen where, people taking sides, and they're very definitive on which side they want to be on. Less and less of the, people that kind of stand in the middle, so to speak. People are speaking up one way or the other. Whether we agree with them or not is not really the point. The point is that people are really, beginning to take sides. There are many people who are gathering. It's the gathering of the tribe, so to speak, to really change the outlook of humanity. And while I'm on that subject, before I kind of forget, following my show tonight, I am going to be on Carrie Cassidy's Whistleblower Radio tonight. Her and I will be conversing. She invited me as a guest on her show, which I'm more than happy to do. We are going to be talking a lot more about what's in store for 2014 on a way different basis, obviously. Carrie's a way different interviewer than I am. Not better or worse, just different. And we're going to be talking about the Keshi projects, and we're going to be talking about some other people that she has had on for interviews. So we're going to be exploring some of these topics on Carrie's show immediately following this on Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com, and that will be Studio A. Unfortunately, Wolf Spirit Radio will not be able to simulcast the show for us because there is another show following mine tonight. But if you would like to listen into that, you can listen into that tonight from 9 to 11 p.m. Central Time. Let's see. Let's talk a little bit. Here's some of the more interesting things, in my opinion, that's happened as far as over the last few weeks. I feel like I've been gone forever. I feel like I've been gone for months and months, and it really hasn't been quite that long. But I really was visiting family and friends, and I really had no place to, sit and find a quiet spot in order to be able to produce a show. And I did want to focus my attention on the time that I did have with my family and friends, because it's difficult sometimes for me to get away and be able to do that. So I was grateful for that time. I needed to recharge my batteries. It also allowed me to sit back and really think about where I had been and where I need to go. I think we all do a lot of that reflection at the end of a calendar year. As some of us do it starting in the solstice time, we begin to look at what have I done in the past years? This is where I want to go. Is this where I want to, continue my journey? Do I want to make some alterations in my plan? So I always think that this last few weeks is always a really good time for the internal self to sit down and do a re-evaluation and a kind of a restock of where they've been as to, is that really the same direction they want to continue in, or do they want to expound on it or tweak on it a little bit? And I think everybody needs to do that, and me included. I mean, I do it all the time. I sit down and go, okay, this is where I was headed, but, as I look at this, maybe I need to alter my course just a little bit because this is probably better suited. Because the last time I was on, I talked a little bit about the authentic self. That doesn't go away. We all have to be authentic with the self. And we all have to strive to be better people and to make that connection to the higher self, to the higher vibration, the higher frequencies of who we are, and really tune into that, because that kind of gets you out of this matrix illusion, or as the Elohim call it, the construct. And as I said to you at the end of last year on my last show, I am going to be doing some shows on that. I'm going to be bringing in the information from the Elohim on the construct that they really want me to begin to start sharing out in the public. Not that it's private at this point, but it just hasn't been as public as they had wanted it to be. So I will be bringing it out through the shows. I'm not quite sure. I haven't got it quite structured yet. I'm still readjusting to these energetic shifts, and again, the super moon, and then some of the other astrological as well as energetics that's been going on. So there's a lot of readjustments here going on. But the thing that I wanted to get to is just some of the personal observations that I have made over the past few weeks watching people. First of all, there seems to be a lot of releasing. Now, for anybody that still follows Cliff High, and I have not done that for a while, he always talked about the release language or the build language. I have no idea if at the end of 2013, if there was a release language that he felt might be coming up around that time. But I did feel, or whether that even coincides with it, but as I was observing people, I observed a lot of emotional releasing. A lot of old stuff that people had been carrying around with them seemed to be just, going out of them, just coming up and going out of it. And in the past, and I'm talking about years past, had those same actions been taken by those same people in a similar situation, the outcome would have been different. And why would have it been different? Because they would have handled the emotional letting loose as a personal assault, or as they would have to go on then on the defensive, those who are the receiver of this emotional outburst. And what I found was more and more people, as they were doing these kind of emotional releases, as soon as they got done with whatever their barrage was done. And the other person had their barrage and it was done. And then everybody was just okay after that. It was just like a purging. And some of it is really old stuff that they were purging. And around the same people as I was observing them, they literally became lighter and brighter. It was as if, these weights that they didn't know that they were carrying around had been lifted. And you could really see that people began then to reflect on, geez, what else might I be carrying around with me? So even though it may have appeared to be a negative, as you're watching the first part of it, if you allowed the scene to play out before you, you realize that it was just a purging. It was really quite astounding to watch that happen on several occasions, more than several occasions. And the conversations this year, I did myself not have too many people that talked about what we always talk about, which is New Year's resolutions. Instead, people are changing their verbiage. And they look towards 2014 as not New Year's resolutions, but a new way of being, or a new way of interacting, or a new way of looking at, or a reassessment. That was a term I heard a lot, a reassessment. So I found that really fascinating, is that the verbiage a little bit was changing as well from the previous years, which is also fascinating. But then we have the two areas that I want to kind of talk with. One of them is the dream area. One of my favorite topics, for those of you who have followed the shows for years, know that dreams are just, I just absolutely love them. They're so phenomenal. They're so revealing. I learned early on, and I do mean really early on how to become a lucid dreamer. That story I've told many times, so I won't repeat it here again. I became a lucid dreamer even though I did not understand what the term lucid dreamer was. I learned how to get in there and change what it was I was looking at. In this case, over the last few weeks, not only is the lucid dreams come back to a really super clear picture. It's almost like somebody took the contrast button on an old TV set and put it into focus and sharpness. Really interesting. I just noticed there was just a sharpness and clarity to the dreams the lucid dreams that had not been there before. So I thought that was pretty cool. And the next thing is what I call the shared dreams. Now these shared dreams have taken on a little different hue than what they had done in the past. In the past, the shared dreams were that two people recognized each other in the dream, and then in their waking hours, even if they don't live in the same house, one would call the other and say, "Oh my God, you were in my dream last night." "Oh yeah, I saw you there." And then there would be this interchange of information where both people would then begin to express their side of what it was that they remembered about this shared dream experience. What I have found is that I have been dreaming with people in these dreams, people that I know, and I'm interacting with these people, and we're coming to some conclusions. We're having this experience. We're having these situations that show up. And then the next day, I will get a phone call from one of these people that tells me that they went and did this or did that, or they came to this idea or understanding. And it was in direct, and I do mean direct, correlation with the topics that were discussed in the dreams. So even though this person doesn't remember me in the dream, they are expressing their activities that were expressly talked about in the dream. So that's number one. And then the next thing is that as I'm explaining some of the dream, the person is finishing my sentence. They knew exactly what I was going to be saying, and it wasn't a deja vu moment. It was more of like, I just knew that's what you were going to say. Not like I'd heard that before, but I knew that's what you were going to say. Now, some people call that a psychic moment, but this is only when we're talking about the dream time. So it's been pretty fascinating to watch that scenario kind of change up. I also found in observation mode, as I'm listening to people, is that people are really making this interesting connection with each other. They know what the other person is going to say, what they're going to do, and it gives them these moments of, complete funniness. They go, "Oh my God, I knew he was going to say that. Oh my God, you finished my sentence for me." If the other person hesitates, the other person finishes it. Not a normal, quote unquote, activity that they're used to experiencing. So again, all of this began taking place right after the solstice. I find this quite interesting, is to, really pay attention to those kind of things. So my question to anybody out there is if maybe they've had any experiences like that, if they've noticed anything like that. I think this is the onset of this new collective, as it were, that we are all experiencing, of the collective consciousness, a shift, and maybe this is kind of a side collective consciousness, if you will, one that's, groups of people that are creating, different experiences that aren't part of the negative aspect necessarily of the collective. I'm not quite sure exactly where I'm going with this, because the Elohim have talked to me about it, and there's much for me to sit down and discover. And truthfully, for the last 3 weeks, I haven't had too many minutes where I've just been able to sit down and allow the time, and haven't had the place to do it, where I wasn't just always busy or having something else to do, where I could sit down and get the rest of the pieces of this puzzle. The other thing that I have had go on is, and this started, early December. I was in a store, a local store here, and my friend was with me, and her and I were walking through the store, and I was just walking just slightly ahead of her. We were leaving one area and going to another. And as I did that, literally from my right side that crossed over to my left side, there was almost a complete manifestation of something, or someone, I should say, to the point where as I'm walking, I stop because I know I'm going to run into this person. And at the same time, at the side of my glance, because I turned sideways because that's where the person was coming in at, I saw Sherry stop behind me. And I didn't know at the time whether or not she was stopping because I stopped. She saw the same thing, this almost a complete manifestation of a person, and they walked right in front of me, and then they were gone again. Now, there has been just too numerous to mention specific incidences It's very similar to that happen all the time. I mean, it's almost become so frequent, it's almost like a daily thing. There's something, a physical animal or being crosses my path to the point where it's almost a manifestation. You can almost reach out and touch them. So I believe that is because the energetics are supporting people who are tuned in, or at least acknowledge that we certainly don't share this space by ourselves. There certainly are spirit beings that are in less dense form, if you prefer to look at it that way, as well as animal kingdoms. I'm sure the rest of the kingdoms that are all there presented as well. And I suspect some of them may be what we would call the undergrounds. That's also been very prevalent, that I've been getting a lot of vibrations from that which resides underneath our feet. I don't know if I'm picking up on hollow earth. I don't know if I'm picking up on extraterrestrial energies or both. But there seems to be a lot of literally physical movement beneath my feet that I can sense and tell that there's some shifting and changing going on within Earth herself, within Earth Mother, and it has to represent, like I said, some extraterrestrials perhaps, could be the hollow earth thing. I am really not quite sure yet. It could be a combination of that and plus some other things. Again, I really need just to sit down and allow myself to focus in and figure out what it is that I might be experiencing or seeing with that. So, now, that being said, boy, I've just been yakking away. I did want to remind everyone, honestly, if you do have questions for me tonight, please don't hesitate to write. I don't have a guest lined up. I did not get a guest lined up. This is one of those days that I spent doing some things for a family member that it's actually been going on for a few days, that has absorbed more of my time than I thought it was going to. I thought what was a project that was going to be maybe a 24-hour period went into 3 days. It is finally completed, and I'm hoping now to be able to move forward and bring forth some of the information that the Elohim have been sharing. And speaking of the Elohim, they're asking me to speak to you about some emails that I have received in regards to them. You know, every so often I'll get several emails from different sources, and I always wonder about the timing of it. About if I speak to the same Elohim that so and so speaks to, and they're not always that one dude, which JP has come on and talked about it because him and his ex-wife knew about it. On the Elohim, and and I'll repeat this again and again. Many of you are familiar with Wendy Kennedy and her work and her channeling the ninth dimensional Pleiadian collective called Mrs. P affectionately. That group of the Pleiadians, there are lots of them in there. So understanding that those individual Pleiadians, as well as any other entity being, even if they are part of a collective group, they are also individuals within that collective. And those individuals are as unique as you and I are unique from each other as well. There's all the same similarities, but then we also have all of that vast amount of differences, the uniqueness that makes us uniquely us. Otherwise, we'd all look like a bunch of clone projects. And there would be no use in doing anything because we'd be sitting there talking to ourselves, and we have to figure out which self we want to talk to, because who makes the choice of who we talk to, right? So that being said, those that have written me, and I'm trying to address these questions for you, those that have written me, I told you that I would address them on a future show. And the Elohim that I have been speaking with is the ones I've been speaking with since I've been a little girl. My understanding is they came with me, that I'm part of that collective from, some lineage from somewhere, right? And that, my vibration allows me to speak to this group of the Elohim. Does that mean that that's all the Elohim there are? Probably not. And that doesn't mean that somebody else that has an Elohim that I could speak with that portion of that group, because it's all based on energetics, based on the connection, the work that you do. There's so many variables in there. It doesn't make anybody's information more or less than another's. Absolutely not. You know, in order to find your authentic self, you also have to listen to the information that's given to you, and does it resonate with you? Does it feel right to you? If you question it, then good. Go out and question it. Do your research. Find out some information. If it feels right to you and you don't want to question it, then don't. But always leave your mind open that tomorrow you might find some additional information, or the next day or next year or whatever the case may be, that allows you to shift and re-evaluate who and what it is that you're listening to. I myself do that. I reevaluate all the time, because that which I listened to last week may not pertain to me this week, because we all grow and change. We're not the same people as we were from a day ago, 2 days ago, certainly 2 years ago. So the Elohim wanted me to address that issue, is that for those of you who are comfortable with those that have the messages of the Elohim, by all means, then, please continue to listen to them. If it doesn't feel right to you, then, spread your wings and find out what else that there might be out there for you. Okay? Let's see. What else? The supermoon of the 1st. Did anybody out there, or was anybody out there able to actually go out and see it? We had too much cloud cover. And speaking of which, we'll talk about the weather here in just a few minutes. Because my understanding was that was pretty cool. We're going to get a chance for another one on the 31st, which is very rare. So we have to understand that we've started out this year in a rare form, literally. Rare energetics. There's, how do I want to word this? There was a very different feeling bringing in the new year, calendar year, as well as when we talk about the solstice. If you guys, those of you who follow the solstice calendar and look at the solstice, a lot of people look, and again, varying ideas. There's no right or wrong way. Some people look at the winter solstice as the beginning, the ending of one year and the beginning of another. And honestly, there are others that believe that the spring equinox is the beginning of a calendar. So, who's right and who's wrong? Right now we're kind of going by, that which is mostly accepted around the world. I suspect a lot of these things will begin to change, by the way. I believe that people will start looking at things from a more metaphysical or holistic viewpoint, and we might get away from how we view our calendars, and people are going to be a little less uptight about what the date says, and instead live their life through more of the feeling center, which is it feels like this is the end of the year and it's time for celebration to begin on the new. I myself am kind of aligned with the whole solstice thing, the winter solstice. It feels like that, we're getting, we've been in hibernation and we stay in hibernation to gather our strength, to be able to sit back and quietly meditate, to strengthen ourselves to begin a new year, which is what brings on the spring. And so this year was pretty magical as I was watching all these individual pieces, and individually they didn't mean much, but you start putting this bigger picture together and you realize how really magical this last few weeks really have been. Oh gosh, I lost my train of thought of where I was going after this. Give me a second, guys. I lost my train of thought. Well, isn't that just silly? Oh, the weather, yes. And then that brings us into this real funky weather. So, they're now naming snowstorms, which I think is just the most ridiculous thing I ever heard. But hey, anything, for some sensationalism here, right? You gotta love it. One of the coldest winters. We're gonna shatter all records. An extreme cold, but let's talk about global warming, eh? A little sarcasm there. We are also going to get another cold blast that they are predicting that's going to be really, really, really bad. That's going to go all the way down here in the United States, almost down to the end of Texas into the Gulf of Mexico, which is quite astounding. It's quite astounding to see this. There was snow in Australia. There was snow in Egypt. There was snow somewhere else, places that doesn't get snow. We are witnessing changes. Are they freak? You could see maybe if there was snow in Egypt, that would be freaky. Or snow in Australia, that would be freaky. But now you're talking about snow there and again, I forgot where the other place was. Now we have snow in places that never get snow hardly. I mean, it's such a rarity. All at the same time or around the same time. Then we get this tremendous, tremendous cold front moving in that's sending and plummeting temperatures down so low that it's beyond dangerous. So you have to watch what this weather is doing. I suspect some of it has to do with not only the energetics, within the solar system. Also, I think a contributing factor was the sun's magnetic shift, coupled with, where we're sitting at, in space, coupled with the way that the alignments of all the planets and the energetics behind that. And let us not forget, unfortunately, we have to mention those that, pepper our atmosphere with all the chemicals and all of that screws up, a lot of different things in my opinion. So I think we're going to see a lot more strange weather patterns. As a matter of fact, they made a really strange statement. Let me see if I can find it. See if I can find that terminology that they use. Give me a second, guys. I'm looking it up now. Because I thought it was just a really, really unusual way of putting that. And I'm almost there. Somebody's asking me, do I think that this could be a nuclear winter? That's an interesting term. I'm not so sure it's not. It still remains to be seen how much more force is going to be behind all of this, Tracy. To me, it wouldn't be unheard of, for sure. Here we go. Let me look at this. I think this is where I found it. They had a term for it. That wasn't it, so give me a second. I got one more place to look. Hercules, isn't that the wonderful name to have for that? For the snowstorm. Now, isn't that terrible? Doesn't that always happen? It always happens. I find something, I go back to find it, and then it's not there anymore. They had a name for this, though, for this cold front coming in. Something tornado thing. God, what did they call that? And I was like, wow, isn't that interesting verbiage that they're using to express this this weather thing that's coming in. Let's see if we can find some more on it. Okay, that's not it. Anybody finds it, let me know, because you'll know what I'm talking about when you see the verbiage on it, because it's just absolutely the most bizarre thing I ever saw in my life. I was like, really, we're using that kind of language? So really be very cognizant. I think that's the other thing that I would like to talk with people about tonight too, is being very cognizant of how they're wording things. Interestingly was is watching some of these commercials. Just absolutely amazing to me. Some of the things that they're saying in these commercials, and if you pay attention, you're going to realize where literally where that programming is coming in at. It honestly is going to just surprise you when you start looking at that, going, "Well, I didn't hear that commercial like that before." And there's a reason for me saying it like that, not because you should be watching the commercials, but then you can actually see where all this brainstorming is actually coming from. And then when you begin to really identify the lies, the deception, and illusion that they build around these commercials, and how you see it everywhere you go, you begin to see really what this huge construct is all about. Okay, we've got another question. We have a term in Ontario called ice quake, so-called the underground ice exploded. Well, yeah, ice quake. I actually heard that when I was doing some research on the weather tonight, Tracy, and I think that's really an interesting thing as well that they're saying. Again, all this terminology for things that didn't exist before. But this, I think it comes in Sunday night. Isn't that when that cold snap comes back in again, the next round? I think it's Sunday night here in the United States for the Midwest. They call it for the Midwest. And if I do find it, I absolutely am going to copy and paste it to something so that I can talk about it again. Because it's important to understand what the verbiage and the language is that's being spoken. Because behind it is, it elicits a response from us, right? Somebody says something to you and you get triggered and in some way you respond to it, you recognize it, you feel it, you sense it, whatever the case may be, however it affects you. But the point is that it does affect you. So the verbiage is very, very important to pay attention to how something is being worded to you. One of the things, and I've talked about him a lot on my show in the past, is Jordan Maxwell talking to me about language. He was the one that really opened my eyes up to it. Is the language, and he was talking about the courts of law and why the lawyers actually have to go to school. They don't go to school necessarily to learn the legal, learn the laws. They actually go there to learn how to speak in legal terms, which we sometimes call legalese, and a form of that. And because what that terminology does is it creates an illusion of what is really the truth. That's what's the most fascinating thing about it. Police officers are also trained in a language, in a way to communicate. So they communicate so that they are in command of the situation. It also can set people up for entrapment, even though you can't prove entrapment, because it elicits a response from the individual. Very fascinating. Anybody that wants to get into it, maybe do a little research on some of Jordan Maxwell's videos that he has done in regards to language. Back in 2000, I don't know if Carrie still has it on her site, of the 2009 Awake and Aware conference, where Jordan was speaking, and he gave me an interview. And then when he left my interview, he went in and began speaking on that same topic. My interview was only 15 minutes long. He spoke for over an hour. So you can see that there was a wealth more of information that he gave when he was up speaking to the audience, because I was putting together just a compilation of people there at the Awake and Aware conference. So I would tell you is that this is really going to become very important for people. It's more about saying what you mean and mean what you say, and understand what words that you're actually using to communicate. Are the words that you're using to communicate, are they truthful? You may have always thought they were to be truthful because you learned them that way. You were taught that way. But is it really truthful? Is it really what you meant to say? Many shows that I've had in regards to that topic as well, is that we do need to bring out, a new dictionary for a new language that we need to create, a more truthful and authentic language for the human being, and for the human, as the Elohim would say. And Tracy wrote back, getting back to the weather a little bit. It was colder than on Mars. Isn't that interesting? I thought that was pretty fascinating, by 4 degrees, I think. Or something like that, 4 degrees colder than it was on Mars. Now we're getting into some really strange, odd weather. It's very difficult. Interestingly enough, though, humanity can survive a mini ice age. We all have way more information, way more resources, way more ability than we would have had the last time a mini ice age came through, if that's truly what's happening. It could be that there's just been so much manipulation that it's thrown everything off balance. There could be just a lot of different reasons for it. And I would suppose, really honestly, when you look at it, that it's really more than one reason. We're going to be getting down here to a sultry -10, without the wind chill factor. So, I'll be out there in my short sleeve shirt for sure and my sandals. Not really. Anyway, it's been very cold, and I do want to, as we're going through and creating, humanitarian ideas here, if you all know of somebody that lives alone, can't get out, maybe has an inadequate housing to begin with, that you could go and help out, or you could make sure somebody goes and helps them out. If you've got extra blankets or extra warm food or thermos, whatever, we need to protect each other. We need to help each other. So at this time with many nations, but specifically here in the United States and Canada, we're having such a terrible cold snap. I mean, beyond a cold snap, that if there's anything that you can do to assist somebody that may need the assistance, please by all means do. You don't go unrewarded for things like that, that's for sure. Not that any of you would be looking for rewards. But every act of kindness spreads kindness out there, and it vibrates and it changes the vibration of this planet. So, hopefully, everybody that can be will be safe and warm and have food to eat, good food to eat, during these next few days of this cold snap that's coming through. And, we're going to keep an eye on all of that, is for sure. Now, I did also want to tell you, coming up in the second hour, again, get your questions ready. You can ask personal questions if you want to call in, and I'll ask Dave to give me the phone number if you guys want to call in, if he wants to take phone calls tonight. I'll answer your questions on the air tonight. Or you can write them in the chat box. Again, you can get to that at Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com. I'm in Studio B, all caps please. Or right here at wolfspiritradio.com in their chat room. Again, all caps. And then we can see about what number Dave wants everyone to call in on. If you have questions for me after the break at the top of the hour. And I interrupted my own self when I had a train of thought and thought I could keep them both going at the same time, and I guess that wasn't possible at this moment. I had to do with the weather thing that I was going to be talking about. Oh, here we go. Dave gave me the number. Unfortunately, my little eyeballs are not doing so well. I'm going to go ahead and post this. Maybe I can get it bigger. Let's see. Oops. Let's do it this way. 310-421. Oh, that's not right. That's too many numbers. All right, here we go. Let's do it this way. 310-421-4053. There it is. That's 310-421-4053. But do not call in until after the top of the hour, because we'll be going on break here any moment. I'm just waiting for the music to come in. It'll probably be about another 2 to 3 minutes. So I'd love to have your questions or topics or conversation with any of you tonight. I'm looking forward to it. I didn't give you guys much of a heads up, and I didn't promote it too much because I had been, like I said, had been traveling a lot, visiting family and friends over the holiday season, and then was working on some projects for a family member over the last few days. And as they say, time got away from me, and got really involved because this project had to be done. And I was helping out the family member in order to be able to get it done in a timely manner. Oh, we also have another phone number. Oh, wow, Dave, Dave is just all full of good information. Gotta love Dave. Dave's my buddy. I love Dave. I love him. He's my friend. Here we go. 775-657-5973. So you guys got two of them. If anybody wants to call in after the top of the hour, please, I'd love to hear from you. I know it's rare that I take phone calls, so tonight was one of those nights that I thought this will be a nice night, to chat with everybody. and see where everybody's at, what kind of information they would like to get answers to, or topics that they would like to discuss, or their viewpoint that they would like to share. So this is kind of the beginning of the year. Normally at this time of the year, this is the first year I haven't done it in a very long time. I usually do an astrological show. Unfortunately, things have changed. And that won't be done again. So we'll be having to do different things with the astrological updates, and I'll be working on them over the next few weeks. But you guys stay with us. Here's our break. Don't go away. And I'll be talking to you at the top of the hour. Welcome back, everyone. You're listening to Journeys with Rebecca radio show. And again, welcome to 2014 to all the listeners out there at Revolution Radio, Wolf Spirit Radio, and Journeys with Rebecca. 2014 is going to be a magnanimous year for many people. Of course, it is what you make it a lot of times and what your direction is. And I wish for everybody listening to this tonight and those that will be listening to it in the archives a beautiful, peaceful, and prosperous new year. And prosperity, doesn't necessarily mean just financial. It can mean it in many different ways. So we can open our horizons. But I wish for that for everyone in the world. Not just because you're listening to my radio show, that's for sure. 2013 was an odd year. I made a comment that usually at this time of the year, my first show out at the beginning of the year, usually Nancy Ogren joins me, been a very odd year for the guest thing. I've had been a lot of shifting with people. The people that I've had on for many, many years, everyone's life seems to have shifted and changed, and everyone's lives can be, not everyone, but people's lives are going in different directions. So it just didn't line up. It hasn't lined up for a while with a few of the guests. I have played probably the most inordinate amount of phone tag, email tag, Skype tag that I ever have in all the years combined. It's been a hit or miss trying to get a hold of people, and the same with them trying to get a hold of me. So there's been kind of this kind of offbeat thing going on, between people where timing, just didn't line up. And I actually looked at that. I've been looking at that for all of 2013 because it seemed like it happened, pretty much right around April or May of last year. I probably need to go back and look at that and see what was going on, astrologically and energetically around that time. But some of the guests that I would have on that were frequent guests, or certainly guests that, had made enough appearances that they were known for, to be on the show, with some regularity. It seemed like there was not only were there health issues maybe that were involved, but there was, again, timing issues. The connections of communication seemed like it got lost. A lot of missed emails, of course we talked about that. We've talked about technology is not stable. We're working with still working with third dimensional technology, and energetically we're sitting in a higher vibration within that third dimension, at the very least. And so the technology certainly, hasn't risen to the new energetics, to keep them in line with that. So, things didn't work out. So, I'm one of those kind of people that I look at it going, I wonder what the reason is. I'm not quite sure. I don't usually fret over it. So I'm going to be going forward and perhaps, I'm not sure yet, I may be bringing on, somebody else, for an astrological update, maybe quarterly or something. I just don't know yet. I haven't gotten to that point. Like I said, I've been spending the last few weeks kind of, in my own space with my own family and loved ones and friends, and also, trying to assist as much as I can. That being said, I also do have some, I guess it's an apologies to make to people that haven't always been available when they have called me. It's just that things have been very different over the last certainly several months for me specifically. And so my own I guess we'll call it routine, even though I don't really have one, but my own habits have changed as well, and I haven't settled into the new energetics yet either. So, please be patient, bear with me. My job is still to do what it is that I do. So if you'll be patient, I promise, all things will happen when they're supposed to. Anyway, that's that. Maybe some other people have probably had some things as well. That's people that were always in their lives or they connected with, and all of a sudden it just doesn't seem like it's working as well. It's time to step back and take a look at it or let it flow from you and then see if it shifts to come back in a renewed and different way, a better way, or if it comes back at all. Sometimes it's just about people growing and changing because of circumstances in their own personal space grows and changes. That's what life is. That's the constant, is change. Yes. Yes. Okay. Questions? Please call 310-421-4053 or 775-657-5973. We're at the beginning of a calendar year, 2014, so if you have a question that you would like for me to answer, I would love to answer it for you tonight on the air, or please write in the chat boxes, all capital letters, and the monitors will forward those to me, and I will get them answered. Okay, that being said, new technologies. I want to talk a little bit about some, I think I had him on, November. November. Bruce Fenton and his lovely wife, was on, along with the father, son, and then Bruce came back on a couple weeks after that with the, rediscovery, we're going to put it this way, a rediscovery of some tombs or pyramids or something down there in Ecuador. And since then, it's been really fun. I've been seeing these little articles popping up where other people have gotten a hold of that information. And so I'm waiting to hear back from Bruce. Hopefully I'll be able to get him back on again. And we're going to talk about some more of the information that they have found out in regards to that place that they have just recently rediscovered. And then, gosh, I don't know about the rest of you, but there's a ton of that stuff coming out, and I just love it because the Elohim told me about it. And again, theory rarely looks like the actuality of something, right? So, like they were showing me all these different places and just different hot spots on the planet where they were going to be rediscovering different things, and, all of these things that remained hidden would be coming up into view. And, even though I knew it was coming and I saw this where they showed it to me, as the years have gone on and all of these discoveries have come forward, it's quite delightful, but it certainly isn't exactly how I had pictured it in the vision. So it's always kind of interesting when it actually shows up. Oh, yay, I've got a question here from Artemis. I think I'm saying that right. I've noticed a huge relationship focus. Is this part of the energy? Okay, let me have you reframe that for me. You've noticed a huge relationship focus. Is that within yourself or within other people, focusing on relationships? I'm not quite sure if that's what you mean by that. So I'm going to wait to hear back from that, Artemis, before I answer that question for you. Yeah. Getting back to, people are now kind of responding to the Ecuadorian thing. It is really exciting. It's exciting about what they're finding down in Australia. I loved having that father and son team on and talking about those tunnels and those sacred places that they found. I mean, just, how fascinating. Someday I hope to be able to travel there personally myself. There's quite a few places that I would hope to be able to travel to see and to witness and to experience these beautiful energetics that are literally all over this planet. We do know that there is a lot of people that do some really not so nice things on this planet. Our government officials, our elected officials, people that consider themselves in authoritative positions, who have, run this planet, so to speak, and have kind of taken it and turned it into, some kind of playground for the egos to grow. And, many of them are very harmful to humanity. But if you only look at the negative, you'll never see the good. And if you don't see the good, then I don't know what to tell you. But I think we don't need to be foolish about it either and think that the negative doesn't exist, because that's not true either. What we do need to do is just to remember is to focus on the goodness, because that's what we really want to draw into our life. The more goodness that we can share, more happiness, the more love, the more caring, the more compassionate, and the more generosity that we can share with another, the more we shift this planet and allow that to become the predominant energy as opposed to the darkness that we've been experiencing for eons of time. Okay. So Artemis has answered my question. It has been a theme at work, especially significant other relationships are changing, shifting, and parting a lot lately. Yes. The new energies, as we've talked about before, for the last couple of years, what they do is they challenge. Many people are going to be going through challenges to take a look at what choices they've made, and in the case of specifically of partnerships. What I have found through the many years of sitting down with people, doing readings for people for all these years, the big thing that I have noticed in the pictures that have unfolded is that most of the time when people get into a relationship with a significant other, whether they're married or not married, doesn't matter, just a significant other, what somebody they can consider their mate or spouse or partner, a lot of times we get into the relationships for the wrong reasons. We may feel compelled to live out a certain pattern because that's what our parents did, that's what everybody else did. Everybody else may be telling you, oh, he's a nice guy, or she's a great girl, or whatever the case may be. Sometimes putting some guilt on people. A lot of times we marry or connect with people who are not in our best interest as far as carrying on a healthy love relationship. And you can love somebody, doesn't mean it's going to be a healthy love. It's going to be fraught with all kinds of negativity within the relationship, a tearing down of each other as opposed to assisting and standing by somebody, supporting them, loving them unconditionally, and not the constant complaining about them. As a matter of fact, I just had this relationship, or had this conversation about relationships earlier today, and it really is an ongoing theme for people. But it seems to be and I understand what you're saying, because I do see a lot of people taking a harder look at their their relationships, and they themselves then have to take a look at their own personality, what they put into a relationship, what do they expect out of it, what is their participation in it. We've kind of been, I'll use the word again, programmed to think that relationships have to act and feel and look a certain way for it to be an acceptable relationship. Many times, old school thinking is, guys get together, what do? Is they complain about their wives. Remember the old, when they get married, they used to do the joke of putting a ball and chain around him, right? Well, that just really doesn't set up for any kind of a loving relationship. It sets up the energetics of that is that, now he's under this ball and chain. It's not a positive. In other words, it's a negative. It's meant to be a joke, but there is something very serious behind an action like that people take. The big thing now is, and this is, I'm not male bashing, so for the men out there that are listening, just wait until I get through it, because I'm going to go to the other side as well. The big trend right now is, the man caves. People go looking for houses, and the man has to have a man cave, a place where he gets away from his wife. And I agree that everybody needs their own space. They need space to themselves. They need to have a place where they can go, and not necessarily because you're getting away from your wife or your spouse or your significant other, but a place where you can just be you, whether it's a garage that you have a hobby in, whether it's a room that you go read in or meditate in, or whether you leave the building and go running on your own, whatever it is, everybody needs some time to themselves. I agree with that. But the idea of a man cave, a man that, when he gets into a house, the only thing he can think of is how does he stay away from his family? I want a whole basement. I want a whole upstairs. And the woman is not allowed in there. And you have to think to yourself, really, that's not what a healthy relationship should be about. Again, I am not negating the fact that everybody needs their own space, but it's the attitude and the outlook of what does that man cave really represent? Is it really represent a place where he's just going to go and, be by himself, or is it a place that he's really secluding himself into so that he doesn't have to interact with his family? That should tell you right there that that's probably not one of the healthier relationships. It's probably very disconnected. And unfortunately, I get a lot of relationships questions like that. A lot. Now, on the same token, you have women that do the same thing. Of course, a woman will tell you is that most of her, she doesn't have a man cave. The whole house is hers because normally, and again, we're talking now established stuff. I'm not talking about the individual here. This is generalities, so I don't want anyone getting upset with me here. The woman's place will be the whole house. She takes care of it. She runs it. Now, we have seen a lot of role reversals where the woman goes to work and earns the money. The man stays home, takes care of the kids, cleans the house, and does cooking and cleaning. Whatever works. A healthy relationship is a healthy relationship. It doesn't care what the dynamics are. I think that's really what I'm trying to say is that we need to get away from these old paradigm thought processes of why are we getting married? Why are we hooking up with this person? Do we really like this person? The first question I get almost in every reading that I have done that is a relationship reading is, I just met a guy, is he the one? And my question is always back to them, do you like them? And people are taken aback by that. You can love somebody, doesn't mean you like them. Does not mean that you believe in what they believe in. So there's this, again, back to this thing of language. I love a lot of people. Doesn't mean I agree with them, that I want to spend the rest of my life with them, that I have the same characteristics as they do, or I have the same alignment that they do, but I can love them for who they are individually. Doesn't mean that because I love them that I can make a relationship work. And I think that's where people really are beginning to understand that there's something not quite right, but they don't have the answers. They don't know what it is that doesn't work for them. They just know that it doesn't feel right. So, for those of you who understand the premise of a healthy relationship, this is where educating them can assist them. Ask them, what's your idea of a relationship? And allow them to figure it out. They have to be able to expand beyond their concept of what they've always understood as relationship. I think we're way past that time to sit back and really focus on what am I contributing to the relationship? Am I expecting something from them that I myself might not do? And I'm talking about behaviors or attitudes or generosity, not generosity, whatever the case may be. Do you want children? Do you not want children? What's your idea of how do you raise them? I mean, there's all kinds of things to take into consideration whether you want to spend your life underneath the same roof, possibly procreating, having children. Do you really want to bring children into a relationship that's unhealthy from the basis that all you do down the road is complain? When your girlfriends come over, you're complaining about your husbands. When a guy and one of his friends come over, he complains about his wife. If there's the complaint department is filled more so than the compliment department, you probably are in an unhealthy relationship. If you can't sit down and talk to that person like you would a friend, a very good friend, a close friend, a trusted friend, you're probably not in a healthy relationship. Now, there's always mitigating circumstances. There are a lot of people who are not emotionally connected to anything. I myself know quite a few people that they wouldn't even begin to know how to communicate with somebody because they can't communicate with their own self. They kind of go through their world locked in kind of a silent space where they don't question too much, they're just doers. But for the sake of this conversation and topic tonight, we're not talking about unawakened individuals. We're talking about those that recognize something isn't working and they're trying to do something different with it. And for those of you who, again, are familiar, like Artemis, if you know anybody at work that you might be talking to, you might begin to ask them questions that they would ask of themselves. What constitutes a relationship? And if they, most generally people will say, well, somebody that respects me or has a good sense of humor, is generous or this or that. They'll have all these adjectives that they'll be using. And then you might want to ask them, is that what you're bringing to the relationship as well? Is this your person that you're friends with? Are you friends with your mate or spouse? Do you trust them? Doesn't mean our lives should exclusively be around just one individual. One individual, most generally speaking, can't fulfill everything that the other person needs. That's why we have family. It's why we have friends. It's why we have outside activities, because that's the way the human being is structured at this point. Now we have another question that came in. Kat says, I've had some personal shifts in the last 2 months, rather wondering what direction that will continue to go. Those shifts are not settled in yet, Kat. I'm sure there's times when you still are feeling, when you wake up in your day and you kind of go, wow, what's that about? I suspect that you're going to have a few more of those. As a matter of fact, I'm not so sure that many of us who are listening to the show, and myself included in that, aren't going to be experiencing more of that. How do I want to word it? More of that in 2014 than they did in 2013, but literally from a different perspective, a more understandable perspective. In other words, I think many of the people that are going to be experiencing this, Kat, and I think this includes you as well, are more knowing that this is a shift. These are energetic shifts, and during these energetic shifts, we take advantage of them by allowing that energy to run through us, to process it the best of our ability, and know that which we may not have made peace with totally, that it will continue to grow and expand within us, and we have to be patient and loving to our own selves. Big key there, guys, is find a lot of people are very harsh with themselves, are very judgmental with themselves. There's one thing to do self-reflection. It's quite another to beat yourself up. Judging of oneself is not a positive thing. What you have to say is, I don't like that behavior in myself, so only you can change it. Not about judgment. It's about recognition, acknowledgement, and action. So for you, Kat, I feel like that there's going to be a lot more of this. I don't know if it's going to be as frequent. I think it's going to settle down just a little bit, or I'll rephrase that. It's going to slow for you a little bit, but you're going to have peaks and valleys with it. You're going to have some days when you're just like, oh my gosh, I feel like I'm out of my skin, and then a few days later you're going to feel better, but you're still not going to feel like yourself. But I do feel like that they're telling me by June that I feel like that you're going to have a good grasp or handle on these shifts that you've come through, because there's going to be like a lot of little epiphanies about some self-discovery and discovery of more meaningful things, at least meaningful to you. So I suspect that this is going to be a pretty good year for some very positive personal growth for you. And we have a little poltergeist running around in the room here tonight. It's very fun. How fun is that? So, Kat, I hope that helps you, because I really do believe that you are going to be in a good space this year. At least by the middle of the year, you're going to find yourself in a way better space. Not that you're in a negative space now, but you're going to feel like you're in a better space because you've processed a lot of the energetics. They're beginning to sync up with you. And just so that everyone knows, one of the things that I did get for 2014 that will be happening a lot for a lot of different individuals, it's going to feel like you're kind of on a boat out in the water, and it's going to have waves. And so you're going to wave up and down, but they're not these huge waves, but they're going to come in bursts. So there's going to be a frequency of waves, and then it's going to settle down a little bit, allow you to absorb whatever that shifting and changing is, and then it's going to pick up in activity again. And I see this as kind of a constant thing, at least through the next couple of years, believe it or not, this wave pattern. But for me, as I'm looking at this and I look backwards from where we've been, it's going to be less intense, less strong. These high waves aren't going to be so high, and you're not just going to come crashing down. They're more of a gentle wave, way more gentle than what we got, I think, in 2013. And there seems to be a more positive energetics coming in on these incoming waves than there seemed or felt to be in 2013. And many people in 2013 also experienced a lot of we'll call them the kind of a ghosty, if you will, sicknesses and illnesses. All of a sudden, things would just be an onset of stuff. I do suspect some of that physical symptoms will continue to occur, but understand some of them are actual healing, and some of them are an energetic kind of, I'll call it just kind of like blow through, so to speak, and it only lasts for just a few minutes or maybe even a few hours. It doesn't have a source, but it does have a symptom. Some of that is the DNA restructuring. Some of it, again, is just the energetics. But just pay attention to those aches, pains, whatever it may be as it shows up for you, because there's a lot of telltale signs there in what you may be experiencing, and you'll be able to attribute it to something going on in your environment. And I don't necessarily mean a physical thing, but certainly a metaphysical thing. And Kat, you're very welcome. You got a real shiny light, Kat, and just remember to shine it for everyone else. Okay, we got another question from Bright Eyes. Could these waves be experienced as equilibrium problems? Absolutely. However, don't I can tell you is that I get a lot of quote unquote dizzy spells, but they don't last very long. They're momentary. Sometimes they last for maybe up to 30 minutes. I have found that by just sitting down and taking some really great, long, slow, deep breaths in like you were if you were going to meditate, that kind of a breathing, it helps to alleviate that kind of dizzy-like feeling that you can get. It's not a sure cure-all. Obviously, if it's persistent enough and if you've got pain and other symptoms, certainly you might want to go to a healthcare person and have it checked out. But I have found that these waves of energetics also have to do with, or waves of equilibrium problems or dizziness, have also been caused by a swift change in the barometric pressure. I've been doing a lot of research. I talked to you guys about that, I think, last month too, about some barometric pressure things. I found that it has a lot to do with that. And I'm very interested to see now that the sun has flipped, whether or not I get as many of those as I did leading up to it, because it seemed like I had a lot more in 2013 than I ever did before of those quote-unquote dizzy spells or equilibrium issues. And since the shift, I haven't had any experiences of it yet. So it could have something to do with literally the energetics that we came into. And remember, now tomorrow is a less gravity than we've ever had. So I want all of you to pay attention to see how you feel. And if you noticed anything at all, don't manufacture it. Just keep yourself clear and just be aware and see if anybody actually gets any sensation of actually feeling less dense tomorrow, or they feel lighter, more buoyant, whatever the case may be. Again, it's very important that you begin to really become knowledgeable in your own energetics that's happening around you and how your body is responding, because it's talking to you. It's telling you how it responds to these unseen influences. Okay, so I hope that helps. But yeah, it certainly can attribute to that for sure. So now we're okay. Now people are talking about having headaches, migraines. The migraine thing has always been an enigma to me. I used to have great bouts with migraines, and I do mean great bouts with migraines. You know, the whole thing, sensitivity to light, nausea, extreme pain. I mean, it was just absolutely horrid. I mean, I literally was non-functional. I went to a doctor, actually a nurse practitioner, and I was actually there for another reason, and he came into the room and he said, "Do you have a migraine?" And I said, "Well, how do you know that?" Because this guy didn't really know me. It'd been only the second time I'd been to him. So he really didn't know much about me, but obviously a very astute person. I said, "Yes, I do." And so he, one of the few times that in when I say recently, within the past 10 years, that I've let anybody do anything to me, from a, medical standpoint, at all. So what he did was he put a nerve blocker up in my head, and it still has lasted all these years. Now, I still get headaches, but I no longer have the pain, and I don't have the nausea that's associated with or the sensitivity to light. What I do have, though, is the body sensation. If anybody that suffers from true migraines, their body becomes very weak, they're immobile, they have a certain feeling that comes over them. I still get those once in a while, so I understand the idea behind migraines. I always found them, like I said, to be an enigma. I always felt like mine was caused from a bad alignment within my system. Now, I think it's both energetic and was both energetic and skeletal as well as muscular. Just due to my past experiences, that's what I felt mine were from. I think that the migraine thing is a case-by-case basis as to what may be triggering those. But the one thing that I have been getting is these, I'll call them the phantom headaches. I will not be doing anything that will be strenuous or anything that would normally you would equate to bringing on a headache, and a headache will come on. But a lot of times, if I just sit for about 30 minutes, it goes away, and I don't have to do anything. So again, I think it's part of these energetics. But let's also talk about the wonderful topic of chemtrails, because our environment is so saturated with all that toxicity and all the stuff that they're putting out there. I think that some of this could also be part of the chemtrail poisoning that's in our atmosphere, whether you can see the chemtrails or not. That stuff is still floating around because they're still spraying it somewhere. The other thing is to watch your foods. I try to eat as much organic, non-GMO'd stuff as I possibly can get my hands on. I would say my diet is almost 80% of not eating any of that junk at all. And I notice that when I have to, by choice, and not by choice, but because, I really would not be able to eat if I didn't sit down and have to eat some foods on occasion that weren't of the best quality, that I don't feel as well, that within like a 24-hour period, all of that junk that I, have gotten rid of my body has come back in, and my body's trying to process it out. So I would also tell you is that a lot of that has to do with, the chemicals, and that includes like your cleaning supplies, that includes your toothpaste, that includes your shampoos, everything that's in your house is just filled with chemicals and laden with fake and false things. If you begin to read the labels on everything, most of them, you'll take those names home, type them into the computer, you will absolutely be astounded at what kind of junk is really in everything that they're selling. Everything that they're selling. So, educating yourself on that, being aware of that. A friend of mine, she has a huge sensitivity, she's extremely sensitive to smells, but she has a huge sensitivity to things like, the Febreze spray or bounce or fabric softener sheets. There are neurotoxins in those things that they're using. Some of the chemicals are neurotoxins, the things that make it smell good. All that smelly good stuff, they're fake. It's fake stuff and it's got neurotoxins in it. So again, substituting, so many different things for what I used to use. My biggest friend now is baking soda, coconut oil, and, vinegar. Those are the three primary things that we use, in cleaning, in our foods, for toothpaste, things of that nature. So there's a lot of benefits to going back to what they used to have. Lemons, and limes, your citrus fruits, they also have antibacterial stuff. Some of them are antimicrobial, so you can get rid of that Clorox bleach stuff. All of this stuff, it can be contributing to the symptomatic of rashes, of headaches, of irritating eyes, respiratory issues. The list goes on. So one by one, start eliminating things out and see how you feel. Give yourself a good 30 days of elimination of things and see where you're at as you start changing over. What I did was, as I would use up old products, instead of going and buying new products, I would substitute it for the natural organic things, such as, like I said, the coconut oil or the vinegar for cleaning, for cooking, for everything, and just drain cleaners. There's just so many uses for it. So again, those are some of the things that might help with some of the health issues that people have. There's a lot of things that cannot be addressed because they truly are just an energetic shift. Again, I'd like people to begin to recognize what happened after this magnetic shift of the sun and see if they don't begin feeling different than what they did before it was completed. If you haven't paid attention to that, you might want to just do a little reflection and see where you're at. Okay, it looks like we've got a question that's come in from Tammy. Spirit seems to be guiding me in a certain direction at full speed ahead. Is there anything you can share with me from your peeps on this? They're talking about spearheading. It's an interesting choice of words. Like you're spearheading something. Fascinating. Wow. That's an old, by the way, just so you know, Tammy, this is a past life thing here. That it's a recurring event, and you don't do it in every life cycle, but it is a recurring event. In this case, it's a very positive event. Yes, they are sending you in this direction that you're going in. It feels like full speed ahead, but it's not outside of your realm of comfortability. So even if you think you might be getting overwhelmed, just take a deep breath and know that you have complete capabilities of getting to the destination, understanding the destination is not the stopping point, but literally an arrival point. So I want you to understand that. It's very important. They're saying it's not the ending point. It's actually the arrival point when you hit your destination of where they're sending you. And they're saying that, and they've just got a huge smile on their face. They are just smiling so big. This is an agreement that you had. You are in an agreement that this is the direction that you were going to go. They've picked a fantastic time because it seems to line up astrologically in a very positive influence. You might want to get your charts out or have somebody do the charts for you or whatever. You will be able to find a time cycle on this for yourself, Tammy, that will give you the direction of when you should arrive at your destination, which is actually the destination then turns around and becomes another arrival point for you. This is fascinating to see this timeline in the way that they're showing it to me. I hope that answer helps you. Yeah, they like this, Tammy. They like this a lot. And again, they're just smiling. I think you're going to enjoy the ride, and just remember to take a deep breath, because honestly, they are not doing anything that you did not agree to. They're not sending you in a direction that you do not have the capabilities of handling. And I think there's going to be a couple of really nice surprises. If you are open to the subtleties and I call them the little mini miracles in life, you'll see them along the way on this beautiful drive. They're calling it a drive that you're taking. So interesting. You are the vehicle of your boat. All right. Very good. You're welcome, Tammy. Happy New Year, my dear. And thank you for the questions. That's very, very, very good. Very good. Okay. If anybody else has any questions, we still have, probably about 15 minutes or so of this show. The first show of 2014. Been a lot of fantastic pieces of information. That has been shared, as well as a lot of really wonderful questions that you all have asked. I just appreciate it so much. I want you to know how much I appreciate you, each and every one of you as individuals, and as well as a collective sitting here in the chat rooms. You're fantastic people, very dedicated to the hosts, here on these radio stations. And my hope for all of you is that for those of you who share the information, and those of you who are obtaining the information, that you take some really good action to assist yourself and others in the transforming of this planet, because I do believe that 2014 is the huge pivotal point that's going to take this in a new direction. Humanity's certainly headed in a new direction. We have come to the point where we're just full up. We're full up of war. We're full up of killing. We're full up of starving. We're full up of being controlled. We're full up of the hatred and the violence, and we're full up. We're full up of it. And we can't take any more. We're full. So whenever you get full, you have to release. So I think there's going to be a lot of release things that you're going to see this year in 2014. We're releasing all of that. We're literally spewing it from us. That's so it makes room for the goodness, the generosity, the kindness, the compassion, the helping, the assisting, the loving of not only the self but of each other, and understanding that we don't have to have life like this. We don't. And 2014 feels like to me a way more optimistic year than even 2013 did. It is what we make of it as well. I mean, it's not just going to fall into our lap. We have to work at it. We do have to work at it. Douglas wrote, when do I see the next big push? Actually, I see the next big push again this month. I think we're going to get a few big pushes here, early on in 2013, and then again back in the middle of 2013, or 14, I'm sorry. Ooh, wrong year. We're going to get a couple more, pushes here in 2014. It's the beginning here. And then again in June, I think we're going to get some more, another push. Now, I haven't lined any of this up with the astrology at all. It's unfortunate my astrologer, Miss Nancy Ogren, isn't here to assist me and look that up or any of that. I truly miss her. It's been kind of weird to start out this show this year and it be different because she's not here with me. And, so I'll have to line that up for you, Douglas, as far as when I see, if that lines up with the astrology of it. And then again, I'm hearing November, of this year, 2014. So we're, getting towards the end of the year. We should have another big push. Now that one in November is going to be the interesting one. I'm not getting the same type of energy with it, that I am in the other ones that I've already talked to you about. Gold standard anytime soon. Listen, this is an interesting question, Douglas, because this gold standard thing, had the things been a little different and there wasn't a little usurping going on here, I think we would have already seen it. So in my opinion, when I see it like that, that means it really is a done deal, even if it hasn't shown up in our physicality yet. So this could be any time from tomorrow to the next 2 years. We should see the gold standard. I can't be any more specific than that because there's just too many hands in that pot. But I'm pretty much sure that within the next 2 years, we're probably going to go back to, if it's not the gold standard, we're going to go back to something that's more meaningful than what we are currently using. I suspect more that it'll be this time, sometime this year. So, but I can't be sure because there's just so many hands in the pot. And by the way, there's a lot of, wolves in sheep's clothing involved in this, as well as the other reversal. We have to look at it both ways. We live in duality here, right? But for those that are in the white hat troop, so to speak, that want to bring things back around into the whole world differently, we've got some people in there that've got, I look at them, they look like dark hairy hands. It's a metaphor, that shouldn't be in there and they're not found out yet. That they kind of tipping the scales in the wrong direction or, impeding the flow of that. So, but when I look at that, to me, it's already done. It just hasn't shown up in our physicality yet. So look for it within no more than 2 years. I think it's going to be way less than that. I hope that helps. That's a great question. Thank you for that. Yes. Okay. I always got to get back to my train of thought here because I never can remember. I have a UFO following me around. Could you offer any insight as to who they are? Interesting question. Okay. Are you saying you have an extraterrestrial following you around, or you have a UFO? Because those are two entirely different things. So I'm going to give you a second to hear that because I know we have a delay in this. So do you have an extraterrestrial, or are you saying you have a UFO, like an object following you around, or do you have an extraterrestrial being following you around? And when I get that answer back from, and this is from Goldust Fairy. Interesting name. I like your name. And no, you shouldn't feel threatened in any way. I don't feel I don't feel a negativity towards the whole process with them. I don't feel any negativity either. It's more of a curiosity. No, more of a it's a word I want to use here. It's not, curiosity isn't exactly the right word. I feel more of a research, like they're researching. You aren't the first one, by the way. You aren't the first one they've researched. I cannot tell who they are. They keep kind of shifting a little bit. So I can't tell who they are. But anyway, I'm going to move past that because I have another question that come in. This is from Cosmic Wanderer. Are you aware of what's going on with Fukushima and the potential for an ELE due to the radiation? How do we best deal with the radiation affecting us physically and emotionally? Cosmic Wanderer, I have seen the articles on that. I also have to say that, remember, for everything that happens out there, there's something to counteract it or to negate it or to neutralize it or to change it in a different direction depending on what it is we're talking about. It does have a potential for an ELE. Yes, it does. But there are what I want you to do is I want you to go and use your search engine in your computer and type in natural preventatives or natural cures for radiation poisoning. You'll come up with a whole list of things that you can go down and purchase that are inexpensive that you can use in order to help if you think that there is radiation. If you have radiation poisoning, it will help. There's nothing wrong with being prepared. Just don't be paranoid. Don't wish that upon you. Don't focus on that as a negativity. Just prepare yourself and keep moving forward in your life. Do what you can do to maybe help prevent it, which is to send out the good thoughts and energy that this event does not take place. There are many people looking at this situation. Even though it hasn't been well televised or certainly spoken about a lot, because they certainly don't want to bring this to humanity's attention, that this has a potential of doing that, but also understand that there are other forces out there. There are also a lot of other people out there that have a true fix for that. Anything that's done to this planet can be undone or neutralized. And I just don't think it's our time to annihilate the human race. I just don't think that this is it. So do yourself a favor and go look up, the natural cures or natural preventative for radiation poisoning, and educate yourself on that process. And then I think you'll be okay with that. And then start looking for people who have the answers to neutralizing that. There's a lot of different people out there that have researched this whole Fukushima thing and the radiation that's coming from there and the potentials of being able to clean it up. So remember, for everything that you read, there's always something else that they're not telling you. In this case, they're not telling you, and what you're not reading about is the idea that this can be turned around and it can be salvaged with a minimal, any more negative effect on humanity. So take a deep breath. Okay. Back to you, Gold Dust Fairy. I kind of thought it was an object, but of course, in the object there are beings as well. So again, I feel benevolence with them. I feel like that they're researching, they're making a connection. My personal opinion is I wouldn't sit down and try to have a conversation with them, however. I just suspect that they're going to move on past you here shortly. If they do have a message, trust me, you will get the message. If that's what they want to do, is they want to leave you a message, you will know that they're leaving you a message. But I don't sense anything that you need to be concerned with, or that I just don't sense that. I don't sense the negativity from them. They aren't what I would call warm and fuzzy though either. So, just understand that they are not the, big-hearted, warm-hearted individuals. They're a research team. So just understand that. And I think you'll be just fine. And Douglas says, you're asking me about your health. There are some issues that you need to address. Some of those issues can be addressed in a different approach. So what I want you to do is take a look at everything that you do to either as a preventative or as a curative, and look at what you're taking or doing or using or whatever, and trying to do some restructuring on. Some of it is not making, it's not having the same effect. And this is going to be true for some of you who are listening out there. If whatever things that you're doing are no longer working, it's because your body's changed. And in regards to that change, you have to give your body something else. Again, the only constant thing in this world is change. So you have to figure out, does it need more activity, less activity, different activity? Does it need minerals or vitamins, or does it need less minerals and vitamins? Do I need to focus more on just the food sources? What is my food? What is my outlook in life? My meditation? What is my belief system? Do I believe I'm sick? Do I believe I'm well? If you believe you have pain, do you focus on that pain every day, or do you focus on something else to alleviate the pain, or do you just focus on something else, period, and then move through it? What do you do? So in regards to the health situation, Douglas, I would tell you is to reevaluate what you've been doing, again, both maybe as a preventative and as a curative, and seeing if you can't shift that around and change that slightly to get a better effect for what you're doing. But I don't see anything terribly unusual popping up or showing up around you at this time. Not anything that you need to be, concerned with or look at or anything like that. I think that might be helpful for you. And I have time for another question here. Again, this one's from Douglas. Not my health, just health development of the world population. Okay, well, some of the statement that I had there, Douglas, was for some of the world population as well. I hope all of you will tune in to the show that's coming up after this. I'm going to be on Whistleblower Radio on Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com with Gary Cassidy. We're actually going to be addressing world concerns, world issues tonight in that show. I didn't want to speak too much about all this stuff before I got on to Carrie's show tonight, because that was what that was going to be about. And for those of you who would be listening to that, I didn't want it to be too redundant for you. What we have to do is we have to get some things changed in regards to the health of the world population. And some of that is the truth behind the chemtrails, the admittance to the chemtrails. Hell, they don't even admit to us that there's an Area 51, although everybody knows there is one. So, what we're really working on is just really trying to get this up and out, for the truth to come out for everyone. And, for that, I hope that the whole world can be healed. Honestly, I do. My goodness, this second hour went by so fast, you guys. I really, again, want to thank you all for being here. Welcome to 2014. I have some great guests coming up with some very unusual technologies and things that may help us all. I will be getting him on in January. Look for my newsletter and announcements on the website. Bless you all. Good night, everybody. See you next week.